Hello and welcome to National Park Wild. I'm Eric, and as requested by Bobber Foot, this is every coastal U.S. national park ranked. Let's get out of the way what a coastal national park is. I'm being very lenient for this one. Basically, anything that is on the shore of an ocean, gulf, bay, or Great Lake is going to count. Islands count, pretty much everything counts. The only thing that might be considered that isn't is parks that have alpine lakes, such as Crater Lake and similar. Those are not going to be on the list. But also subscribe to the channel so you know when new national park content comes out. And with that out of the way, let's get through this. There are 17 total, and number 17 is Indiana Dunes National Park. This lakeshore has its pleasant areas. It's nice with beaches and some interesting geologic history for sure, but I consider it among the weakest national parks as my experience. I did not think it was particularly beautiful. It is still pretty, but compared to others, and that's what we're doing here, comparing them, it is the weakest. Number 16 is Biscayne National Park in Florida. This one, it's pleasant as well. I like the water activities a lot, and I should point out that this is based on the park as a whole and not just the coastal stuff. That'll definitely be very apparent by the end of this. But the coastal stuff's great. You can snorkel, you can paddle, see manatees, sharks, barracudas, a whole lot more. And it's a nice one, but it's similar to Indiana Dunes, so it's going to have a similar ranking. Number 15 is Everglades National Park in Florida. I should point out I live in Florida, so this park is not as exotic for me as it is for others, but I still love seeing everything from alligators to manatees to dolphins to the tons of wading birds. And it's some of the best wildlife you'll ever see. Outside of that, there is a lot of unique plant life, but it does all look similar. So if you're not super into understanding what each plant is and really examining that, I don't think the scenery aspects will really speak to you as much. Number 14 is Redwood National Park in California. I know this seems bad, but there is a huge jump from 15 to 14. So Redwood is an excellent park. It's just that there are 13 others I think are more enjoyable. Redwood's biggest strengths are the massive trees and bright-colored ferns, making for a somewhat unique, almost prehistoric hiking experience everywhere you go. And the rugged beaches are also quite impressive and beautiful. I like that it's a fairly quiet park, and the biggest flaw is the fact that there are several state roads and interstates running through it in a way that makes it feel a bit less natural, but I still very much enjoy the park. It's only low ranked because others are better, not because it's majorly flawed. Number 13 is Isle Royale in Michigan. Isle Royale is an island one that I think is probably best for backpackers. I'll say the scenery is not a huge step up from, for example, Everglades. The thing that stands out most is Stoll Trail and the rocky coastline. That's beautiful. But in my opinion, even after going very far into the island, there's just not a whole lot outside of trees. And while trees are nice, there's other vast, sweeping vistas that I much prefer. There's still great wildlife here, and it's relatively secluded, though I actually found there were far less people at Redwood when I went to each one. But I very much enjoy Isle Royale for what it is, and it's one of the best island national parks, even if there isn't a ton of competition technically. Number 12 is Glacier Bay National Park in Alaska. I'll admit I have not seen the crux of the major ice and glacier ports, but it's beautiful. I haven't seen Marjorie Glacier, but the wildlife stands out. From humpback whales to otters to grizzly bears to seals to sea lions, all of that. There's so much to see, and that's probably the best of this park. If I saw more of the mountains, I think I would rank it higher, and maybe some of the forest hikes even. But for now, it has to rank at number 12.
Once I start talking about
Number
Lake
11
Clark and
is
Katmai,
Kenai Fjords National Park.
you're going to be hearing some amazing things about parks.
This one is kind of
And
tough
that's all I have to say
because
for Kenai Fjords.
I think
Thank you
it'd
for
be
watching.
number
I hope you
10
enjoyed this
overall,
video. Stay tuned
but
for
the
videos
coastal
on Lake
part
Clark, Katmai,
isn't
Gates of the
quite
Arctic, Kobuk
as
Valley,
strong
Wrangell-St.
as
Elias,
some other
and
ones.
Denali.
So
I'll see you
obviously
next
on a
time.
list like this, even though I'm taking into account the entire park, the coastal portion is the most important. And while I like Kenai's, I think the best parts of it are honestly the mountains and glaciers. Exit Glacier is wonderful, and I like the coastal stuff, and there's decent wildlife as well. But it doesn't stand out quite as much as number 10, Virgin Islands National Park, in Virgin Islands. This one has beaches, and snorkeling that for me outclass the paddling experiences and boating of Kenai Fjords. Virgin Islands, I've seen turtles, sharks, and quite a bit more in secluded, crystal clear waters. I'm not usually as much into beaches and such as mountains and that kind of coastline, but Virgin Islands might be an exception. I love it. It's a gorgeous place. On land, you still have some pretty solid hikes, but the best of this park is definitely the coast, and that's why it gets a pretty good ranking. Number 9 is Haleakala National Park in Hawaii. The coastal stuff, with the road to Hana leading into beautiful waterfalls and rainforests and all, is great. But what stands out for me is the Martian landscape of Haleakala Summit. The colors are so unique, and it's honestly an otherworldly experience walking around it. And that's why I definitely had to give it a good spot as an overall park. Number 8 is Wrangell-St. Elias in Alaska. Wrangell-St. Elias is a bit of a stretch for coast, because in terms of coastline, the part most are going to experience is Hubbard Glacier. It's a grand calving glacier, massive tidewater one, but honestly, the more well-known part of Wrangell-St. Elias as a national park is on land. And everything from whitewater rafting to Root Glacier Trail to the Kenai Mine is wonderful. And I think it's a brilliant view that you can get at Root Glacier, so it had to get a pretty solid spot. Number 7 is Hawaii Volcanoes National Park in Oregon. I'm just kidding, that's in Hawaii. But Hawaii Volcanoes is a bit higher for me because I'm a sucker for geothermal features, and the massive Kilauea caldera is breathtaking. Along the coast, you still have some unique stuff, the Haleakala Sea Arch, and Kilauea is not too far from the coastline either. So seeing lava is a absolute top tier experience, and Hawaii Volcanoes is definitely one of the best national parks that has coastline. Number 6 is Dry Tortugas National Park in Florida. I mentioned Florida is my home state and stuff's not as exotic for me here, but Dry Tortugas is the exception. A massive old fort that is on an island not far from Key West. That you don't really see a whole lot just kind of around where I am. The history is fascinating. The coral is vibrant and wonderful. Snorkeling here is some of my favorite in the world. I absolutely adore it, and I think it's definitely one of the best national parks, even though it doesn't have sweeping vistas. It's got great wildlife, great history. The seaplane ride there, or the boat ride, either way, is excellent, and I love this park so much. Number 5 is Acadia National Park in Maine. My favorite national park east of the Mississippi. This one's coastal features such as the Otter Cliffs, and Sand Beach, and Thunder Hole are wonderful. My favorite stuff, though, is mountains such as Cadillac Mountain, where you overlook the waters, still get wonderful coastal views, but you're still enjoying land activities. And I feel that Acadia is one of the best national parks as a result. Number 4 is Channel Islands National Park in California. Massively underrated. For the coastal parts, which is actually a lot of it, you have breathtaking beaches, and some pretty pristine mountain cliffs and such in a way that just look so different from the rest. Cavern Points doesn't seem like anything else in the entire US to me, and wildlife from dolphins to sea lions is unbeatable. On the land, you have Channel Islands foxes, and some of the best hiking, and a wild experience that's even hard to find in most national parks now. So that's something that really helps it stand out. Number 3 is Olympic National Park in Washington. In terms of coastline, you have Ruby Beach, Clay Lock, and a whole lot of other beaches. They are some of the best. They're like Redwood to the extreme, with massive rock formations, more rugged scenery, and better wildlife from tide pools to whales. That said, the beaches are actually my least favorite part of Olympic, because of how impressive the Hoh Rainforest and mountain Hurricane Ridge areas are. Hurricane Ridge is breathtaking, massive, the sheer size of each mountain, and the way it extends across the landscape is magical. And then the bright green of the Hoh Rainforest, everything about this park is like Redwood, but cranked up to 11, and I think Olympic's one of the best national parks, period. Number 2 is Katmai National Park in Alaska. Admittedly not really the most coastal focused park, But when you have the coastal brown bears, that stands out. Probably the best wildlife experience I've ever had. Watching the brown bears fish, that is something that brings you closer to nature than pretty much anything else. On top of that, you have Grand Mountains and the historic Valley of 10,000 Smokes, where one of the greatest volcanic eruptions in history ever occurred. That said, number 1 is Lake Clark National Park, also in Alaska. This one ranks a tad higher. I think the brown bears and wolves that I saw are a similar level of wildlife to Katmai, but I thought the mountains were more impressive. You have massive lakes of a vibrant and brilliant blue, and mountains of pretty much every color. And these grand, vibrant, marvelous landscapes are some of my favorite of any national park. And that's why Lake Clark's actually in my top 5 national parks, period, out of the wonderful 63 that there are. Thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed this video. I've not been to American Samoa yet, so that's why I did not rank it, just gonna point that out. But subscribe for more national park content. I hope you enjoyed this list. I'll see you next time.